For decades, global diplomacy operated on a predictable rhythm. When world leaders disagreed, they drafted careful press releases, recalled their ambassadors, or issued calculated policy threats. When Pope Leo XIV recently condemned the escalating conflict between the United States and Iran, he followed this tradition. The Pope was responding directly to President Donald Trump, who had publicly threatened to wipe out an entire civilization in Iran. But the response from the White House ignored the usual diplomatic channels. The president skipped the press briefing room entirely, turning instead to synthetic media. This specific incident represents an addition to the toolkit of power, the use of synthetic media as a formal official response to international condemnation. The president took to Truth Social, posting an AI-generated illustration of himself. He appears draped in flowing robes, placing his hand on a sick man to heal him, with fighter jets and the Statue of Liberty towering in the background. Almost immediately, the internet noticed an algorithmic glitch. The sick man receiving the healing touch bore a striking resemblance to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The post was quickly deleted, replaced shortly after by a different synthetic image, this time showing Jesus hugging the president. This use of AI by a head of state introduces a new layer of friction for the average user. If a presidential post can be hallucinated or manipulated, every subsequent image on the timeline becomes a subject for debate rather than a source of evidence. That single presidential post acted as a green light. Within hours, a flood of parallel fakes saturated social feeds, including fabricated audio of Bill Clinton and forged quotes of the Pope demanding the president's impeachment. When official channels deploy synthetic media, they alter the psychological landscape. It signals to bad actors everywhere that fabricating reality is now an acceptable tactic. This creates an institutional crisis. The sheer volume of high-quality fakes overloads the public's ability to isolate verifiable truth. Human fact-checkers and traditional media cannot mathematically keep pace. They are buried by the decentralized, rapid-fire creation of these false nodes. The greatest threat here isn't the single fake image of the Pope or the president. It is the ensuing algorithmic chaos that slowly erodes our shared baseline of what is real. To combat this chaos, the tech industry relies heavily on digital watermarking and content provenance protocols like C2PA, which invisibly tag the origin of a file. But these embedded watermarks are fragile. Uploading naturally compresses images, shattering that metadata entirely. Even when detection tools work, they're too slow. An image's view count violently spikes into the millions, while the warning flag appears long after the damage is done. Software alone cannot stop the spread. Long before an AI fake receives a warning label, the false narrative has already taken root in the minds of millions of voters. Because Silicon Valley cannot self-regulate at the speed of the internet, governments worldwide are stepping in. India has become the prime case study for this heavy-handed approach. Under India's Draft IT Rules 2026, the government issued a strict, legally binding mandate. Social media platforms have exactly 3 hours to take down any AI-generated deepfake after receiving a government notice. The penalty for missing that window is severe. When the timer runs out, platforms instantly lose their safe harbor protection, leaving them legally liable for every piece of content their users post. This inability to moderate AI efficiently has forced a drastic state intervention. Tech companies are now trapped between implementing extreme censorship or facing total legal ruin. These strict new laws carry a massive secondary effect. Everyday citizens who post political opinions or share memes are now legally classified and regulated as traditional news publishers. To avoid devastating liability, platforms will preemptively over-censor citizen speech, removing anything that even looks like a violation. The collision between the White House and the Vatican serves as a blueprint for the 2026 global election landscape, an environment defined by the speed of the forge and the weight of the law. In an environment where synthetic media is easily forged and governments heavily police digital speech, an algorithm cannot be our final line of defense. The only reliable filter left is the radical media literacy of the individual.